Allies are in pretty much every Yakuza game. There are a variety of different characters that team up by your side, helping you take down enemies or cheering you on in a fight. Many of these characters allow you to do some unique heat actions and can save your butt in a pinch if you are low on healing items, but some others are kind of bad. I've always been curious to see which games have the best AI in them, having allies you can trust to actually help you out in a fight. To start, I want to go over what I will be looking at to rank each of these games. Points will be given for the following: the aggressiveness of your allies, if there are any tag heat actions that they can do with the player, additional points for any new heat actions that are introduced, if they are capable of completing battles on their own, participating in any boss battles with the player, again additional points if they can defeat the boss themselves, and if they are able to remain alive without permanently being defeated in the battle. I'll go over the games in release order, and then rank them accordingly after each entry. So let's see how useful each game's allies are. From humble beginnings, Yakuza 1 has more or less interesting AI. This goes for both the enemies and allies. The combat in the game is definitely expected to be the most rough, considering it is the first of many in the series. The first people to ever accompany you are both the Chads Yuya and Kazuki. They use identical movesets and are pretty average, but are able to hold their own in a fight somewhat, but can get overwhelmed if the player doesn't interfere to assist them. They also have this issue where they sometimes just attack from a distance when there are no enemies nearby, just flat out punching the air and not hitting their intended target. It's kinda silly looking, honestly. The next ally to accompany you is Date, having the same moves as both Yuya and Kazuki. He fights alongside you against Mr.
Get the fuck out of here!
himself, and Shota, who was polite enough to not join in the fight to not make it too hard for Date. One thing about this game is that the allies you have by your side can actually accompany you in some substories, such as Date being able to fight by your side along with Beaking. And now that we're here, you can assist Beaking in a substory after your fight with him. He carries the same moveset from his boss fight, which finally makes him unique from the others. Despite this, he mainly uses the sweep kick over most of his attacks. Your final partners are actually a group of people, members of the Kazama family. They aren't really that different from each other, and they all use the same moveset that Date, Yuya, and Kazuki had. But this time, they very rarely attack, most of the time just punching and kicking from a faraway distance, where they are guaranteed to not hit an enemy. It is a shame, but... oh crap, hold on. Anyway, it is a shame, but dude, seriously? Anyway, as I was saying, it is a shame, but you okay, maybe I can see why these guys don't want to approach Shimano. This dude actually has unlimited cards at his disposal. While allies can't damage bosses, they aren't capable of defeating them. After taking too much damage, allies will go down as if they were defeated, but will get up a couple seconds later. So it's kinda strange why they decided to add that animation in the first place. In summary, there are a total of 8 allies. The AI is somewhat aggressive, attacking regularly, but this doesn't apply to all of your allies, as some will rarely attack at all. But I did notice that they do hit their intended target more consistently when there is only one dude left. There also aren't any tag hit actions in this game. They can defeat regular enemies but cannot defeat bosses, at most only draining their health to about 1 HP. Characters in this game also have a health meter, although you can't see it, as they can go down for a short period of time before they get back up. With all of this, the game is looking to rank pretty low, although it is the first, so it gets a pass. In the end, this game will rank a 4 out of 10 for its allies. Moving on to the very first sequel, this game is an improvement from the previous one, both in terms of combat and allies. Although I can't say the same for the first 2 guys you partner up with. These 2, I kid you not, just stood there, getting shot, not doing a damn thing the entire time. Just hanging out, just chilling, Yeah, there's a guy with a gun trying to infiltrate the Tojo clan, but Kiryu's got this, he's fine. They follow the guy around, but that's about it. Not a single punch from them was actually thrown. Not even one of those useless air punches that they kept doing in the previous game. So let's just move on from these guys, and onto someone more capable. Karu Sayama. Sayama is a stark contrast from the other two guys we just saw. She will continuously throw out attacks, giving you a major advantage in a fight. She has a unique ability where she can grab the opponent in a hold of sorts, similar to Tanimura, but will not throw them if she's holding them in either of these positions. But she will if she grabs them normally. We can introduce something new that appeared for the first time in this game, and that is tag team heat actions. Sayama has two of them depending on how she holds the enemy. One that has appeared several times in the series, and another that hasn't as much, only appearing in another game, but we'll get to that later. Bigger enemies can also break out of her grapple much quicker. Date is your third ally to accompany you. He also has a new moveset, and attacks a lot more reliably compared to the previous game. Not only that, but just like Sayama, he's able to perform a heat action with you. It's the generic heat action that most allies have, but still for its time, it's new. For the last story-related ally, Daigo tags alongside you to defeat the Omi Alliance members that intrude during the funeral. He uses the moveset from his boss fight, and he really loves to use this jumping kick. It's not even that it's ineffective entirely, it's just like, man, can you at least be a little more creative with your fighting style, dude? There are a couple of instances in this game where you will team up with another person from a substory. One of these is Granny White, the trainer of Lao Kalong, so it makes sense that she uses the same style as him. She's over here flippin' and dippin', acting like the senior version of Mr. Try and Hit Me that escaped a retirement home. This makes it hard for the enemies to really hit her, but all the ones that you battle against also have the same moveset as her, so it goes both ways. Although she has one of the cooler movesets of your allies, she does a lot more dodging than hitting in this game. Then there's Yuya, who has two movesets in this game, and his first one is unfortunately not the greatest. His moves come out very slow compared to his Yakuza 1 iteration. Throwing out the same two attacks all the time, with an occasional throw, he will also get caught in throws regularly. But then he receives his coat, and now becomes even stronger, as he now has the same moveset that Daigo had with the jumping kick. Oh. But he does do this rush combo from time to time, so I guess he's not as bad as Daigo. In summary, Yakuza 2 has a total of 7 allies in this game. They are aggressive, but a lot of the times they have their moves overpowered by enemies with faster attacks. This is the first time where allies can actually do heat actions alongside the player as well. They are able to defeat enemies, but cannot finish fights on their own. You get a couple of opportunities to fight alongside them against bosses as well. But again, just like before, they're unable to defeat the bosses themselves. This will put them a bit higher compared to Yakuza 1, placing them at a 6 out of 10. Kenzan was the first game to appear on the PS3, and was Yakuza's first spin-off. While we did receive Ishin, we may never receive this game due to the story within it being something that might not fly today, even if it is history. We have our first ally in Chapter 2, who is none other than Majima himself. Yeah, he's not just a boss ready to fight this time. He uses a katana in place of his iconic Demon Fire dagger, and has many different moves at his disposal, but he just mainly uses this flip attack, like a lot. I wonder where I've seen this before. Since he carries a bladed weapon, this mixed with his aggressive and quick attacks, he can make quick work of the enemies he goes up against, especially if they aren't carrying any katanas themselves. But the enemies you fight are pretty difficult themselves, so too many of them could actually overwhelm your partner if the enemy consistently blocks or if he simply misses his attack. Thankfully, this doesn't happen too much. You get a chance to fight alongside him against a boss, making this the first time Kiryu and Majima team up to take one down together. This makes it so you aren't getting your ass beaten by this guy, as Majima can save you several times in this fight. Ito is the next person in the game you tag along with. and he isn't as good as Majima. He has a decent moveset, but his attack patterns are kind of off and on. He'll sometimes perform strikes one after the other, but other times he'll just not do anything. Kinda just stand there. I wonder where I've seen this before. That sucks, but hey, at least we have Majima. No tag heat actions though. It would have been cool to see what they would have come up with given the setting. In summary, Kenzan has only 2 allies. One is aggressive while the other isn't so much, evening it out to be about average. There aren't any tag team heat actions in this game, which is a shame, and they once again are able to defeat enemies but aren't able to clear battles by themselves. You do fight alongside Majima against a boss though, so that's pretty cool. With the very limited amount of allies as well as some things being taken away from the previous one, this will put it at about a 5 out of 10. Before we get to Yakuza 3, I wanted to let you guys know that I compared the originals to the remasters, and honestly didn't really notice much of a difference. So for this list, I'll just be looking at the remastered versions. Yakuza 3 was the first to appear on the PS3, and was the next mainline game to be released after Kenzan. I'll be going through some of the climax battles for these allies. Your first partner in this game is the punk turned ally Rikia, my boy. He has a pretty standard moveset with decent attacks, and his AI loves to dodge. While every enemy is playing Blockuza, he's over here playing Dodgekuza. Later on in the story, we once again team up with Date, who has a new moveset. You don't really get to see them though, since unfortunately he's not that aggressive at all. Riki is okay, but Date is pretty bad. Of course this game wouldn't be complete without the obligatory Stardust fight with Yuya and Kazuki. They both have unique styles, but the AI doesn't do much with them. Yuya rarely attacks, and when he does, he usually does one of 2 moves. Kazuki isn't any better either. He is better at dodging than anything else. But I did notice that he attacks a lot more when he has a weapon in his hand. I don't know, that just seems kinda weird to me. Then we have Mikio in one of the substories when patrolling the market. He uses the sumo style moveset, allowing him to do some pretty heavy damage. In another substory, we're reintroduced to Il Eugene, that one Korean pop star dude. He has a rather slow moveset, and an AI that barely does any fighting. But regardless of how aggressive he is, it is pretty cool to see him fight this time, unlike before, since in Yakuza 2, all you could do was just escort him around the city. From here on out, remaining substories will only have generic allies, and don't really have much that set them apart from each other. One has the same slow style that Il Eugene had, and doesn't attack often. One has a different moveset from the others, but is still just a generic fighting style. The other one actually has a style that's pretty annoying to deal with when you're fighting against an enemy with it. But I'm sure you can guess what I'm going to say about his AI. But onto something a lot better. This was the first game to introduce tag team battles in the Coliseum. You get 4 different allies: Ibanuma, Saldadov, Hayama, and Hate. And wait, these guys actually fight! There isn't a time where these guys aren't going at their opponents. I mean, hell, one of them even has Richardson's fighting style. This is something I would have hoped to see with the story allies, especially when you consider how annoying it is when you accidentally stumble across a street encounter. But oh well, I guess. That isn't the only thing though, because... Yep, you can do tag team heat actions with these guys exclusively. One of these is reused from Yakuza 2, but the other is actually new, and became a staple heat action in future Yakuza games. While it does suck that you can't use tag team heat actions outside of the Coliseum, it is cool to see them brought back, even if it is only for these guys. Another first for the series was having teammates in climax battles. Ricky Mask is one that you do see in the story, but you only can team up with him in a climax battle. And despite his pretty cool style, he isn't as aggressive as I'd like him to be, as he is pretty on and off with his attack pattern. Other times he'll just be circling the enemies like this, having the most intense staring contest with them. And a lot of the times when he does attack, he usually goes for this running tackle move, which is pretty predictable for the AI, since they almost always avoid it. Majima makes a return in the climax battles as a partner, this time fighting Mine and Richardson. He does tend to circle the enemies quite often, especially when he goes into heat mode, but his attacks do some serious damage and he goes all in. He does get tired when he exits heat mode, but it only lasts for a short period of time, so it's not too big of a deal. In summary, the only real partners you have that can actually hold their own are Majima and Rikia, as well as the Coliseum tag partners. The others you have, especially those in the story, aren't that great. Tag connections do return and a new one was made for the game, but they are only usable when performed with those in the Coliseum. They aren't able to complete battles on their own, and while they do damage bosses, they cannot defeat them either. Your allies are also unable to be defeated in this game. While the story and some climax battles don't have great AI, Majima and those in the Coliseum do make up for it. With that, the game's allies will rank about above average, at a 6 out of 10. Yakuza 4 was the first to release with multiple protagonists, each of them having different fighting styles, strengths, and abilities. But while we have more playable characters, there are less allies, as there are only 3 in this game, 2 of them which appear in the story and 1 in the climax battles. Your first partner is this random homeless man. As expected, his moveset is nothing special. He starts off with his glass bottle, which he can use to stun enemies with for a short period of time, before it breaks and then moving on to his normal style. For some reason, this guy will attack when there's a group of enemies, but when there is only one left, he just grabs and doesn't do anything out of it. Doesn't throw or anything like that. The second is actually the antagonist from the previous game, Hamazaki. He uses the style of the stronger enemies you battle against, and he also loves to dodge, just like Rikia. As a result, he doesn't attack that often either. These allies do carry one major flaw though, and that's that they have limited health. If any of them were to take a certain amount of damage, they will simply remain like this without being able to do anything further. All they can really do at this point is just distract the enemies, which is okay, but kinda sucks. Especially because it doesn't reset even when entering a different area. We've seen in some cutscenes that Hana is able to defend herself, and she's not kidding. In one of the climax battles, you can team up with her, kinda. She's technically against you, but she doesn't actually fight you, rather she's just in a competition with you to take down as many enemies as possible. She uses the same style that Hamazaki used, and only focuses on one enemy at a time. But that's likely due to the requirements of the climax battle. And those are all the allies in Yakuza 4. Yeah, it's a pretty small roster. In summary, this game has only 3 allies, the smallest roster of all the games. Your partners are a little better than those in 3, but still nothing too special about them. It's a shame that nothing new was brought to spice up some of your partners, no new heat actions or even any heat actions to begin with. We only get to see allies in long battles in the story mode, so they aren't really able to complete battles on their own either. There is the climax battle with Hana, but because it's a climax battle and she's kind of required to do that, I don't think it's really fair to grade it on that. So they won't be receiving any points for that. You don't get a chance to fight alongside any of them against a boss, so they won't receive points there either. And this is the first time that they can be defeated in a game. So with all of that, this game will rank the lowest so far, putting it at a 2 out of 10. After Yakuza 4, released the next spin-off for the series, that being Kurohyo, or Like a Dragon Black Panther. This wasn't developed by the main studio handling the Yakuza games, but instead by the people who made Def Jam Fight for New York. Recording this game was a pain due to the fixed camera angles and the fact that I can't use invulnerability, so forgive me if it doesn't look that great. In the story, your first ally is Torunogi. Since this variation of him focuses more on grabbing, he won't attack very often. He will also occasionally perform counters and ground attacks. Overall okay for your first ally, but then there's the fight with him in the Millennium Tower. And he is so much better here. He doesn't rely on grabbing so much, instead actually throwing hands with the dudes you face against. He isn't the only person you team up with in the story. Prior to the last battle with him, you team up with Tenma. With him, you battle against these people in Champion District's crowded alleyways. And it may just be me, but he seems like the best of all of your allies, as I feel he throws out attacks a lot more than the others do. All of them are great, don't get me wrong, it's just that this guy seemed to be on another level. Throughout a series of substories, you come across some allies. Your first one is Akagi. He uses the karate style and helps you take out 15 guys that come at you. Just like the others, he will focus on one target at a time, only really switching up if he gets hit by another person, since the game will autofocus to the person that last hit you or your ally. In general, he's pretty badass. And this also goes for Matsunami, who is your next sub-story partner. He is also extremely aggressive with his attacks, and since he uses the Muay Thai style, his strikes come out very quick, adding to how supportive he is. Now I wanted to save this for a separate part and put them together since they vary from character to character, and that's heat actions. Yes, they returned after being absent in 4, and this time each character has their own unique tag team heat action, depending on who you do them with. Here they are. I honestly love the idea of characters having their own unique tag heat actions. It really gives the characters a lot more personality, I think. Your partners as well as yourself are able to hit each other, so if you throw out a punch and they're right in front of you, they will take damage. But the damage they take is only body damage since your allies can't actually be defeated in this game. Their body damage will only reflect how fast it takes for them to get up as well as how strong their attacks are. Unfortunately though, there aren't any times where you fight against a boss with any of them, which does suck, but there are a lot of other things that make up for it, so it's not too big of a deal. In summary, there are a total of 4 allies in this game. They are all extremely aggressive, not letting up with any of their attacks, and they are once again able to perform tag heat actions with you. New and exclusive ones were introduced in this game while also bringing back old ones. They are able to take down enemies and can complete regular battles on their own, but they never get a chance to fight alongside you against any bosses. They don't have any health, but can take body damage, which can make it harder for them to get up, so they can't actually be defeated either. The allies in this game will rank the highest so far, being at an 8 out of 10. Yakuza Dead Cells was probably the most unorthodox game in the series. A zombie shooter where combat relies on guns rather than physical hand-to-hand combat. This game's frame rate is awful, okay? Completely awful. Even on its original intended hardware it is. So sorry if the recordings look kind of crappy. I tried to make the game look as good as possible, that way it's not running at a total of 10 frames per hour. But hey, what are you gonna do? There are several allies that accompany you both in the main story and sub-stories. For this, I'll mainly be looking at how they handle enemies with their firearm as well as the firearm they carry. Nagahama is the first partner you team up with in the apocalypse. He wields a handgun, so he's pretty simple. He doesn't have the best accuracy, so there are several times where he will just straight up miss his shots. He will shoot really slow at times as well, so it can take him a bit to kill even a single enemy. But he does eventually, so he's got the spirit. He will also get occasional headshots, which do instantly kill weaker enemies, so that's pretty good. Daigo will tag along once you rescue him and several others in Kamurocho Hills with Majima. He carries a shotgun just like him, so he's bound to do a lot more damage compared to the simple handgun. He'll kill and clear groups of enemies on his own pretty quick, so long as they aren't enraged and grab him. You kind of battle alongside him against a boss. You two are separated, so while you're dealing with the Arabaki prototype, Daigo's on the other side killing zombies. He will come close and even aim at the boss as if he's trying to shoot it, but he will never open fire. You will eventually meet this homeless guy who you have to guide to the end of the tunnel, but he doesn't do anything, only follow you around. Once you reach Purgatory, Majima and Akiyama meet, and they soon battle against the Tsuchigamo prototype together. While Akiyama does dual wield 2 handguns, he fires very slowly and doesn't do a lot of damage to it. There are even times where he'll just walk up to it and get smacked to the ground. A lot of people praise him for being able to read people really well, but he sure as hell can't read when there's a 12-foot isopod monster right in front of him. I'm just saying, but I think this guy might need glasses. You have to save him from being chased too, which is a little silly, but I love it. They do have this pretty sick QTE together as well, so I guess that makes up for the rough AI. When you switch to Ryuji, you'll meet up with these SDF officers who only carry handguns, but they do shoot a lot more consistently compared to the others that carry the same type of weapon. You don't stay with them for too long, but it is nice to have them by your side for a bit. Afterwards, you'll meet these two survivors who essentially function the same way. Not much else to say about them than that though. Two more people show up during your rescue, and this time they only have a pipe as a weapon, which is strangely effective against a horde of zombies. And later, you meet another man who uses a pipe against them as well. In this timeline, Kiryu didn't erase his name because people actually recognize him. And after beating zombies the old-fashioned way with Kiryu, Asagi comes and helps you out. She is definitely one of the better people you can partner up with. She uses an assault rifle and can kill zombies with ease. She does sometimes stop to take aim at another enemy, but does kill them pretty quickly, so it's not that big of a deal. Kiryu gets another opportunity to team up with Majima as well as Asagi at the same time, and these two together are definitely a good combination with how much damage they do. Akiyama later comes along in place of Majima in the next segment, where you fight another boss together. Unfortunately, unlike the last one you fought with Akiyama, neither of them will attack, but instead will focus on the enemies that you're surrounded by. Some more time later, you meet Ryuji once again as Kiryu this time, and you team up with him for a large portion of the endgame. Just like Asagi, his Gatling gun hand does some serious work against the enemies. In the final part, you fight a total of 3 bosses with Ryuji, and it was pretty enjoyable, even when it was slow. Also, can I just say, this man is dedicated to helping you out. Even when he gets his gun arm ripped off by Hayashi, he still tries to shoot at him. What a bro. Moving on to substory allies, there are quite a few of them. Some of them aren't too special as they only team up with you for that specific substory, so for any of those type of allies, I'll just run through them pretty quickly. Shimizu is simply a man with a pistol. He's pretty much just Nagahama. Then there's Kendo, who wields a shotgun. He has this unique animation where he shoots around himself pretty quickly, which can have some varying results. Sometimes it's effective and other times not so much. It mainly depends on how many enemies he's surrounded by. One of Akiyama's hostesses tags alongside you, and near the beginning she has this thing that whenever she's surrounded by enemies, she will tremble in fear and completely stop shooting until you get him off of her. Same applies for a man who's a host. He will not shoot or do anything near the beginning of the substory, but near the end of it he's pretty much just Asagi, just not as good. Majima meets this man who wields a sniper. That's it. It's definitely a strong weapon, especially up close, since, well, he only shoots up close. Yeah, he never actually aims from a distance, going against a sniper's main purpose. But the zombies die in the end, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Date, of course, being a cop, has to accompany you at some point, right? I mean, he's definitely good with guns. After getting him food and a strangely placed product placement for a razor, he will team up with you and uses this submachine gun, and just like I said, he's really good with it. Nothing's getting past this Chad. Honestly, anyone who wields a shotgun, assault rifle, or submachine gun are allies that you can definitely trust to help you out. Kazuto did not kill Reina Araze shows up again after his fight with Kiryu in Yakuza 3. And interestingly, they pretty much just kept his gun moveset from that game, with the exception of all the flips and kicks he does. He can even taunt the zombies. This man has no fear whatsoever. And look, I love Akiyama, but this guy is a lot more bearable to be around when it comes to dual wielding pistols. Also, I find it kinda weird that Kiryu would partner up with someone who killed one of the people he cared about in Yakuza 1. I know it wasn't technically him, but he was still involved in the attempted capture of Shinji and Reina. Apparently it was instead one of the goons in the Nishikiyama family, at least according to RGG Online. But since it isn't localized, no one would know that.
Your Honor, I swear it wasn't me. You see, it was actually one of the goons in the Nishikiyama family that killed Reina, not me. RGG Online just isn't localized, so most people wouldn't know that part.
Bob the Clown Guy comes back, but this time with a special weapon. A grenade launcher that shoots fireworks? And can blast the two of you away if you're too close. This man's strategy is something us mere mortals are unable to comprehend. Although he doesn't have a lot of health since he doesn't have any health packs by default, so maybe it's a good thing that grenade launcher doesn't damage the two of you. As for tag team heat actions, they do exist, but they are renamed. instead being called tandem blasts, and it pretty much is the main one that is used throughout the game. It can definitely come in handy, especially when dealing with large groups of enemies. I also got this one to trigger with Daigo, but I couldn't get it to happen again. I really don't know what the requirements are for it. It looks similar to a tandem blast, but instead you guys just shoot at this type of enemy. Characters do have limited health in this game, and when it's depleted, they become incapacitated, meaning they aren't able to do anything anymore throughout the battle. But there are medical kits you can give to heal them, and you can also carry these, which you can use to bring them back from being incapacitated. So yeah, they can be defeated, but also can't be defeated. Your partners in this game are a lot more complicated than before too. In this one, they actually are given unique abilities that you can apply to each of them, and as they rank up, they get new ones each time. All of the story allies have some by default, but any of those in substories when recruited can have different ones applied to them. This can range from the ability to give them better accuracy, or even just giving them an additional medical kit. One thing I want to mention that is a bit annoying in this game is that allies have a bad habit of reloading when they don't really need to. Sometimes these guys will just shoot 2 bullets out of their weapon and then reload when there are enemies surrounding them. It's kinda stupid of them to do that, but I guess these guys just like having full magazines no matter what. But yeah, those are the Yakuza Dead Souls allies. Pretty good. In summary, this game has 21 allies. Quite a lot. Almost all of your partners have pretty good weapons and aim, but some others are just kind of okay. Tac heat actions are present but are instead called tandem blasts, which you can use to clear a large group of enemies. You can also partner up at any point when entering the quarantine zone or any subterranean area. And you get several opportunities where you can fight alongside them against bosses, but they cannot defeat them themselves. Allies can be incapacitated, but can be brought back to life so long as you have the proper equipment. Dead Souls is another game that has great allies, and as a result it will rank pretty high, putting it at an 8 out of 10. Kurohyou 2 was definitely a cool game, but man, getting into street fights in this was such a pain. It may just be me, but I felt like the street fights in this game just lingered on and on, longer than it did in the first game. That is why I believe having allies in battle is an absolute must when playing, which there are a lot of in this game. When you are given the ability to access your contacts, you start off with 5 random dudes that you can call depending on if they're available or not. When you do this, they will follow you around everywhere you go. They will provide unique abilities that are active so long as they are with you. During the story, you have a few different people that assist you as well. The first is Tenma. He's not too much different than he was in his first iteration, still aggressive as always, which is great. We also have this new dude joining the group, Kuki Ryosho, who has his own style. He is of course very aggressive as well. You can unlock his style after a certain story battle with him later on, and it's pretty good, but he's definitely a lot better with it than I could ever be. Ginji is another man you meet during an event where you encounter another fake Kiryu. Honestly kinda sad we didn't get to see a fake Tatsuya instead. But besides that, he's pretty good. His AI is no exception and teams up with you for this specific part. He isn't able to be recruited to your team in your contacts as far as I know, but at least we get him here. Tomatsu also assists you during the story for a few battles, before fighting him yourself. There's also this dude, who I believe isn't recruitable, but he does join you later on in a battle. Yuta is another character you meet, and he is no exception in this game. He is another of the story characters that are automatically recruited to your contacts after you complete the main story. One thing that is an upgrade from the previous game, however, besides being able to call up your homies at any point, some of the ones that you do recruit, or ones that you unlock from substories, can actually access heat mode, meaning that they can perform their own heat actions, depending on the style that they use. Here are a few examples of those. Characters in this game also do have limited health, unlike the previous one. So if you're fighting a tougher group of enemies and your partner is a low level character, they're likely going to be beaten down pretty quick. You still don't battle any bosses with them. The closest thing you have are these enemies with the extreme style, as they have a crap ton of health and do a lot of damage, and just overall are annoying to deal with. But still, they technically aren't considered one, despite it feeling like it. Thankfully, they still retain the ability to complete battles on their own as well. In summary, the ability to recruit allies is great, and since there are a lot that you can recruit, 36 allies is the total amount you're able to get, which is the highest amount for the series so far. Tag heat actions did come back, but only 2 from the previous game remain. It is made up for the fact that characters are able to perform their own heat actions during battle, however. You once again don't get the chance to battle against any bosses in this game either. They are able to defeat enemies on their own and can complete battles as well. But unlike before, they don't have unlimited health, so they can be defeated permanently until the battle is over. The allies in this game are still one of the ones in the higher ranks, however, standing at a 7 out of 10. The Game of Dreams. Yakuza 5 holds a special place in people's hearts. Either it's a game that you love, or a game that you love to hate. Whether it's the story, the gameplay, side content, or the encounters, people have their reasons. But getting to the main point of this video, you team up with Morinaga and Aizawa for a long battle, and their AI is hit or miss, but it's mostly a miss. Again with the grabbing, AI in these games just love to grab. It's a bit annoying if I'm being honest, especially if they never do anything outside of that grab, or anything with it. Aizawa will perform a grab only to be kicked off every single time. They do attack, it just takes them forever to do so. They do use their boss movesets, I guess they just don't use them well. This is the first game where characters are also able to use boss movesets against enemies, so it is a shame that they're pretty bad. Aizawa probably does the most work, but it's not nearly enough. Baba-chan during the prison escape also has a really hard time getting some good hits in, due to the fact that the AI of course isn't great, but also because he just gets easily overwhelmed. There are 2 parts where you have him as an ally, one with Saejima and another with Kiryu, and he's a bit better with Kiryu for reasons I'll get to later, but I do feel like he attacks enemies a lot more often than the others do in this game. Tagasuki, that one cool lone guy, joins up with you during this escape scene in the long battle. I didn't notice this with anyone else, but he is able to pick up enemies' weapons, and one of them is a pistol that has infinite ammo when he uses it. Funnily enough, he seemed to be a lot more aggressive when he had one as well. Saoda is the next guy that teams up with you, and honestly he doesn't have anything special with his moveset in particular. He just has a regular enemy moveset, so his attacks come out slow, and this doesn't really mix well with the bad AI. But he does have this cool QTE, so I guess that makes up for it a little bit. So you've seen throughout this part that your partner will usually just walk around the enemy whenever they have low HP, and not do anything at all. Well, it turns out that they can defeat enemies and can complete battles on their own. And you see this when Baba is with Kiryu in the final part. It's just that the AI seems to be f***ing lazy all the time. I mean, look at them, they can't even comprehend where they're at half the time. I know it's probably not that big of a deal to a lot of people, but damn is it frustrating to see them get hit over and over again without actually doing anything. And yes, allies can be defeated in this game, acting similar to the way they are in Dead Souls when they become incapacitated. In the last chapter, you actually get to have the other protagonists as allies, and they are okay. It seems they do a bit more fighting than the others, but just like before, they grab a lot and will only throw them sometimes. They aren't able to use any of their unique abilities either, so that's a real bummer. In general, I feel like these guys could have been a lot better. These definitely would have been the best allies in the game if they were able to do such. Tag team heat actions are here, but there's no new ones, so it's not anything special. You do battle against bosses with partners on a few occasions, and honestly when there's only a single enemy left, including that boss, they do seem to fight a little more, but usually only when there's one enemy left. In summary, there are a total of 9 allies. Allies for the most part have no sense of urgency. While some do attack more than others, they're all plagued with the issue where they won't attack any further at some point in a fight, usually when a character reaches a certain level of health. Tag team heat actions are here, but no new ones are made for the game. Baba is the only one who's able to defeat enemies and complete battles on his own. And you can also fight alongside allies against bosses, but they don't do much sadly. And they can be permanently defeated during battle. As much as I hate to talk smack about this game, its allies are just a pain to deal with. And with that, the game's partner ranking will be at a 4 out of 10. The spin-off we received after so long of asking for it. This was the second samurai-based game to be developed by RGG Studios. I intended to rate the original and the remake separately. The only issue is that I don't have a copy of the original Ishin, and I attempted to emulate it, but it just ran like crap on my computer. I tried several different settings, but I just couldn't get it to work properly. I mean, look at this. It looks like I was playing a game that was one of those weird EXE creepypastas. I swear to you that this story you're about to hear is completely true. I was bored one day and thought I'd play the original Like a Dragon Ishin that released on PS3. I'd thought, I'll emulate it since I don't have a PS3 on hand. And when I went to download it, the file was titled Ryu Gakutoku Creepy Shin. I didn't pay any mind to it. That is until the game opened, and it was a hellish mess. As I hit new game, instead of the game running as normal, it instead popped up with this. The game then closed on its own, and then a document appeared on my desk saying not to open it. But of course this story wouldn't be good if I didn't open it, so I opened it anyways. And it said,
Isaac, your channel is trash. Sega Enterprises.
Well, that was just mean. Anyway, enough of that. I still intend to rate the game separately. I'll just have to use existing footage that's online. Comparing this one to the original, there are some changes to the gameplay, but none of them really apply to your allies, except for their AI. And of course, it's worse than the original. The allies you have don't really do great as they will attack on rare occasions, most of the time just looking at them. At least based on the footage I could find online. This doesn't apply to your final allies, or any of the ones in Ishin Kiwami however. They aren't allergic to fighting and will consistently land blows on the enemies. The first partner you have is Shintaro, or Date. He has a generic moveset which is to be expected at this point. But at least he fights, which can make dealing with them a lot more bearable. Later we get Suzuki and Genzaburo, or Koshimizu and Kashiwagi. Genzaburo also has a unique moveset to him, but Suzuki does not, which I find kind of funny considering he was the second to last boss in 6. The last people you team up with are Okita, Shinpachi, and Hishikata, or Majima, Saejima, and Mine. Now just like the original, these guys will fight with no problem at all. These are the only characters that are universally good in both games, landing consistent blows and going all out even on the boss. And despite it being a Kiwami game, there aren't many new things added to it. No new gimmicks that your allies have or anything like that. You can fight with them against bosses once again, and they are able to win battles in the Kiwami version, but there really is only one opportunity for them to do so. No tag heat actions are in sight though, sadly, and they brought back your partner's health into this game, but they do regenerate it back over time, so that's a plus. In summary, some original Ishin allies are just bad, if not possibly worse than the ones in 5, with the exception of the final story allies. They have improved in the remake though, where they do consistently attack. Tag heat actions had been removed and there aren't many things added to your allies to make them stand out from the others. You do battle against bosses with them, whom they are unable to defeat. They do have a health meter, but it slowly regenerates when depleted. Overall, Ishin Kiwami's AI is much better than the original, but that's about where their differences end, so they aren't too far apart on the scale, with original Ishin getting a 4 out of 10, and Ishin Kiwami getting a 6 out of 10. A prequel to the first game, we get to see many returning characters in their prime, or in their first early years when they were starting up as a Yakuza. This is considered by most people to be one of the best games in the series, only rivaled by a few. So with this game having great gameplay and great characters, how are the game's allies? Actually, they're not bad. Kiryu is the only one who gets to have people back him up in a fight. Unfortunately, Majima doesn't get anyone. To start, Oda and Tachibana are actually pretty damn good. While Tachibana has a new style he uses, Oda simply reuses Daigo's style, and they both go at the enemy relentlessly. Unlike Yakuza 5, they don't take minutes to land their attacks. And of course, we can't forget the heat actions. New tac heat actions were brought, and they are probably some of the coolest looking ones in the series. These are only exclusive to these characters, and they haven't been brought back since. A pretty good start for the first allies in the story. After 10 years, we finally get to have Nishikiyama as a friend. And no, I'm not kidding, it's actually been 10 years since Nishiki's initial appearance in Yakuza 1. While he does have a boss moveset in the game when Majima fights him, for some reason he doesn't use it when he's an ally by your side. I don't know if it's to nerf him or what, but as stated before, Oda uses Daigo's boss movesets, so I don't really know why they couldn't use it for him. Regardless of which, he's still pretty good as a partner, despite his weaker style. Not as useful as he could be, but something's better than nothing. And thankfully, they also made a new tag heat action with him. Very cool. The ones you encounter in the story aren't the only partners you have, however, as with Kiryu's business, trouble is bound to appear, and you can hire security to watch over those areas. Whenever you enter a street fight in specific areas, they will fight alongside you against the enemies. These people are Taira, Umatsu, Video Boy, Koshimizu, Takashita, Maiden, Jaguar, Officer Kikuchi, Li Luang, and Mafia Boss. While a good portion of them have really basic movesets, some of them carry better ones. Maiden and Mafia Boss carry this boxer style moveset, not really sure what it is. And they can even do this one grab escape attack. Officer Kikuchi actually uses Suguchi style, or a variation of the Kazama style, and Loing has Bruce Ibanuma style. One random thing that I found kind of funny is that at random times, your partners will sometimes target you as if you're fighting them. They won't attack you, but it does look kind of funny. Old tac heat actions return as well, and can also be done with the story allies. They are able to defeat enemies and complete battles on their own with no problem at all. They won't stop for any reason like the previous couple of games. You barely fight bosses with any of your allies in this game. There's only really one fight where that happens, and it's with Nishiki. Of course, just like in many games prior, he isn't able to defeat him, but it is still fun to battle alongside him against Kuze. Thankfully, they had removed the health limit from your allies from 5. Good job, RGG Studios. In summary, there are a total of 13 allies in this game. Thankfully, they were given enough time to think about the disastrous AI from the previous couple of games, allowing them to modify their behavior and make them a lot more useful. Old tac heat actions were brought back while adding a few character exclusive ones for all of the story allies, which is awesome. Kinda reminds me of those that are in Kurohyo. They can finish regular battles on their own so long as it isn't a boss battle, and you don't get to battle against as many bosses as before, only having one with Nishiki. This game takes over with how good its allies are, putting it at the highest rank so far, as it stands at a 9 out of 10. Although some of them might be able to kill you, so maybe they're not so great after all. Just kidding, they still get a 9 out of 10. And now we're back to the beginning, but this time Kiwami-fied. There is a lot more offered in this game compared to the original. Let's take a look at them. Yuya and Kazuki again are your first allies, and in here they both get different movesets, none of which are retained from the original Yakuza 1. They are definitely aggressive in this game, keeping the same energy from Zero, but Yuya has a slower moveset, Kazuki uses the same one Nishiki did in the previous game, so he's not too bad. Both of them together are about average, with one being better than the other. Kazuki throws out attacks faster than Yuya, and you can see this when there's only one enemy left. Date also had his style changed, but sadly, it was for the worst. He does attack often, it's mostly just that his moves come out very slow, so a lot of the times his moves get overpowered by others, especially when he's surrounded. B-King's substory returns and he has a different style than he did as a boss, having the Kazama style rather than Shinada's. Although he was nerfed, he is still pretty good as an ally along with his buddy, and he's not always spamming that weird sweep kick either. And finally, we get to what is probably the best ally in this game, Majima. While Majima does have multiple styles in the game, he will only use his Mad Dog style, and he is by far the most aggressive. He has a lot of super armor during his attacks, and throws out moves a lot. One huge missed opportunity for these two is to have a tag team heat action. There are so many combinations of heat actions that I can think of that they could have done together, but we'll never get to see it, I guess. Probably would have been the coolest in the series if they did. But despite this battle is still fun, but it does have an unfortunate end. One of the Dojima family members pulls out a gun and shoots Majima directly in the chest. Kiryu watches as his friend dramatically falls into the water, and he even says to himself that he's not coming up. But what does he do? His bitch ass just decides to walk away. Not cool, Kiryu. Not cool. How are you going to choose the person that treated your brother like an inferior and disallowed you to do whatever you wanted to do over someone who stalks you 24/7 just to make sure you don't get hurt? Disgusting. Later during the Shimano fight, Kashiwagi brings men from the Kazama family, and actually brings significantly more than he did in the first game. And they actually fight unlike before as well. These characters can be defeated permanently, but there's also a lot of them. Their health is also very short considering how fast they can go down, but you're also fighting a boss, so it makes sense. Overall, these guys are much better than their Yakuza 1 counterpart. It makes dealing with Shimano and his men a lot more bearable. Definitely an upgrade. Much better. There are other tag team heat actions, but they're just the generic ones we've seen over the years. And while there are even more boss battles in this game compared to the previous one, your allies are still unable to defeat them, but at the very least they can clear battles on their own. The biggest change between the original and Kiwami is that allies no longer go down for a short period of time, so that's definitely a plus. In summary, we've gained an additional ally, putting them at a total of 5 now. Their aggressive behavior is kept from 0, so there aren't any downgrades to the AI. It's just some of their movesets are really slow. Only old tag team heat actions are in this game, and you fight more bosses than you did before in 1, but they still cannot be defeated. But at the very least they can clear battles on their own. And they still remain undefeatable just like Yakuza 0. This game's allies are great, but not as much as 0, so with this factored in, the game's allies are at a 7 out of 10. Now we move into the next generation of Yakuza, the Dragon Engine games. With Yakuza 6 being the first Dragon Engine game, it is going to be a bit janky, but this allows for some beautiful things to happen with its physics. I didn't have this game on PC, so I wasn't able to give myself invulnerability. I hope you can forgive me if the camera work isn't that great. I tried my best to avoid getting knocked down given the game's physics, but at least they're kinda funny. You meet Akiyama first in Chapter 1, and he actually has a new moveset made for him for the Dragon Engine just like Kiryu. And your first battle with him is actually against a boss, that being Ed. Not only that, but Akiyama is actually a good partner in this game, unlike Dead Souls and 5. And that isn't the only upgrade, because he is able to defeat the boss. This is a first time for the series, so this is pretty huge. And there is an exclusive heat action that you're able to do with him, bringing in a new heat action. And there are also the Hirose family members. All of them have new movesets and are quite violent. But given that their adoptive father was an assassin trained to kill, that probably passed on to them. And this is only exacerbated when you have all 5 of the story partners with you at once. Akiyama wasn't the only one who got a new heat action though, as there are 3 additional ones that were added that you can perform with the Hirose family members. Somiya is primarily a boss you battle against several times, but he does join up with you for the Shangri-La Long battle. He carries a variation of his boss moveset thankfully, and yep, he's pretty badass. Fighting regular old dudes isn't what makes this long battle great though, because you get to battle against Hangman for the first time with him. Regardless of how you feel about him, Somiya is one of the best allies in this game. Look at that. When Kiryu is grabbed by Hangman, Somiya will do everything in his power to save him. And of course, he's successful. He is definitely one of the best, making sure to beat the enemies down as best as he can. Clan Creator was a new minigame created in 6, and during it you meet many different people when defending the town. On a few occasions you'll enter a normal battle with a boss, and with Joe and Masao. Joe uses the same style Rike used in 3, and Masao will use Kanai's moveset. It is with him and a few others that you're able to use a new heat action as well. And despite the reused movesets, they're pretty good themselves as well. In another substory, we get to meet Pocket Circuit Fighter? As you can see, he's pretty damn old. And as you would expect, his attacks come out a lot slower. But I'll cut him some slack, cause I mean, look at the guy. He's only ever raced toy cars. In summary, there are a total of 9 allies. Almost all of them in this game have excellent AI. They are always on the offensive and don't hold back. New and unique tag heat actions were made for Yakuza 6 that can be done with several different characters in the game. You battle against bosses with them on several occasions, and they are able to defeat them as well, along with completing regular battles. Your allies have a health meter and can go down, but after getting back up they will start to recharge their health back to full, where they will be able to battle once again, so they can't be permanently defeated. With this new generation of games, its allies look to be some of the best in the series, and this will also reflect on the rank, as this will be the first game to receive the highest rank, putting it at a 10 out of 10. The next game to be released would continue the use of the Dragon Engine, bringing back more Dragon Engine shenanigans. For the most part, this one is pretty one-to-one with the original, so there aren't many new allies added to it. And just like before, your first couple of partners are these 2 random Tojo clan members. And wait, they actually fight? Yo, let's go! Yeah, as you can clearly see, they actually fight. In fact, everyone in this game is a lot better than before. For the most part, all of the aggressiveness of your allies from 6 is retained in this game. Saima kicks a lot more ass in here compared to her previous iteration. She has a different moveset from before and even has a new heat action. Dante comes back and is much better than before. He continues to carry the generic enemy moveset for his fighting style, but at least he's aggressive, which is really all that matters. Daigo, being the next ally, has his boss moveset from before. Still aggressive, and he no longer does that weird jumping kick anymore. Instead, he will actually throw out unique attacks every single time, not relying on one single move. Thank God, dude. Looking at the substory allies, no new ones appear, only having those from original 2. This means we get to see Yuya and Granny White again. Between both versions of Yuya, his moveset will remain the same, unlike in the original where he had a slightly buffed moveset when receiving the jacket. At least we don't have to worry about that useless kick in this game again, just like how we did with Daigo. His moveset is okay, but the AI at least tries to throw out a lot of attacks, even if they do get overpowered, which is better than them having a good moveset when they never do anything with it. Granny White also improved, as she doesn't do as many flips in battle, relying more on an offensive approach. She still uses the Lao Kalong moveset, but now uses the same one from Kiwami. Kiwami 2 also has some interesting tag team heat actions. Around each city there are the citizens that you can befriend, and they can actually do some unique tag team heat actions with you. There are also these random women that will walk around the city, and they are easy to notice because they will just walk around you, even when you're fighting, instead of running away like everyone else does. And when you perform their heat action, it does this. There are many tag heat actions in this game, and some of them can only be done with the Coliseum participants. And they really aren't your allies either, since it's a free-for-all, but yeah, you can do it with them. In summary, just like original Yakuza 2, this game has a total of 6 allies. All of them were amped up, especially those that weren't great in the original, and made those that were good even greater. Old tag heat actions can't be performed, and Sayama uses a new tag heat action when one enemy is about to attack you. You do battle against bosses, and they are still able to be defeated. As such, they can defeat enemies and are also able to finish battles on their own. They once again have a health meter, but regenerate it, so that's not a problem at all. Just like its predecessor, Kiwami 2 carries the largest rank, keeping the series allies at a 10 out of 10. Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, or Hakuto Gokotoku, was RGG's first time handling a game with another IP. This game doesn't tell the exact story from the anime or manga, but more so makes its own spin on it. Familiar characters are seen throughout the game, while new ones were created for the sake of the story. Kiryu's even here, since Kenshiro's voice actor is Takaya Kuroda, although he's a bit taller, likely so he doesn't break when performing the secret techniques in this game. So we have White Kiryu and Long Kiryu. The engine this game runs on seems to be similar to the one used for Zero and Kiwami, but there are some parts of it that make it unique, such as characters exploding and flying through the air. And the first one to team up with you is this martial artist in the tournament. He uses the Bruce Ibanuma style, and he's alright. He's kind of on and off with his attack patterns. He will attack a numerous amount of times at one point, but then just stop and will just start walking into them, pushing them instead. Otherwise, he has a good moveset, but only an okay AI. We next have Jagre. His AI is pretty above average, although there are some flaws, as while enemies are stunned, he will just not do anything. Despite his average moveset, he does at least try to help as best as he can. He will tag along whenever he's in your car and during the zombie village segment, so that's pretty cool. He is also the first that's capable of defeating enemies in battle. Later on during the game, he will receive a shotgun that he will then use. He, as a result, relies on distancing himself from the target and shooting them from afar. But since he uses a shotgun, he is able to hit multiple targets at once, so long as they're clustered in an area. He has the AI of those with the same moveset even as a boss, so he's pretty good for what it is. Plus him throwing multiple characters down with a single shot is pretty nice. These two men with the Ishin Spear moveset are also pretty good themselves too, for being generic allies. The moveset they use by itself makes them good, because we all know how much of a pain those guys were to deal with in Ishin. But this time it's in the player's favor. They do attack much more often than Jagre does in this battle. Your final ally is Rei. Rei uses a new style. that being Nanto Suichoken. He is the most capable in battle and uses a few moves from his boss fight. He's also the only character you're able to perform a tag heat action with. Whenever he has this heat aura and there are at least 3 enemies, you can use it. And it's a pretty sick one too. While you do have a chance to fight a boss with an ally in this game, they aren't capable of defeating them, but considering the type of beefy dudes you go against, I don't blame them.
They also cannot complete regular street battles on their own.
Allies, just like before, have a health meter, and when it depletes, they go down like this, but only for a short period of time, as they get back up shortly after. Their health meter is kinda pointless though, since they can take an insane amount of damage to go down. Seriously, I spent like 30 minutes just waiting for this one to be defeated. No fight realistically will take that long, nor will your ally be the only one attacking. In summary, there are a total of 5 allies that you battle alongside. They are quite aggressive in this game, with the exception of a few rare moments where they will just stand there. There is a new tag heat action that is somewhat of a secret technique, although it isn't named.
Allies are also unable to complete battles on their own,
including the bosses. They have a huge life meter, so it's really hard for them to be defeated, but it doesn't really matter since they get back up anyways. The first anime-based Yakuza game is great, along with its allies, putting it at an 8 out of 10.
Probably one of, if not the best spin-off that RGG Studios created. Judgment, or Judge Eyes, took the series we knew and loved and put an interesting spin on it, focusing more on the criminal justice side of things rather than the Yakuza underworld. There are 3 primary characters that will assist you throughout this game. These are Kaito, Sugira, and Higashi. You get introduced to them throughout the story, and the best part, there are no changes to the AI's behavior from Kiwami 2 to Judgment. Higashi and Sugira have new movesets made for the game. Personally, Higashi's is my favorite. Those kicks are something else, man. Higashi does use his boss moveset, although he doesn't have that cool aura effect, and some moves are missing. Kaito, on the other hand, actually has Kiryu's brawler style from Zero. Because there are several occasions where you have multiple people by your side in battle, your allies usually can take down large groups of enemies on their own really quickly. There are also a multitude of tag heat actions here as well. Some of them are modified versions of existing ones, but almost all of them for Kaito are completely new. And honestly, I think they are the coolest ones in the series. You meet several people in Kamurocho and can befriend all of them, which can provide different benefits to your adventure. For some of them, they will actually battle alongside you so long as they are around in that area. There are 4 total that can help. Tanago is the first we'll talk about. He is only equipped with the generic moveset from the Dragon Engine games, and is probably the weakest of all your allies. Ryan is the next. Being a ninja, he of course uses the same moveset that was used by all of those Ishi ninjas. He will throw what is possibly kunais or shurikens at them. He's usually attacking from a distance, but will get up close and personal at times. Now, onto what most people might agree to be the best of them. Tashiro is that one poor dude you keep stealing the clothes off of for some reason. Like, it only happens twice, but it's still pretty sad. I mean, poor guy. Look at him. Fortunately for Yagami, he seems to be very forgiving, and will help you out in a battle whenever one erupts near him. He must have been trained by Rikia in his younger years because he also uses the same moveset as him. Although he does use it a lot better than Rikia did in 3 if I'm being honest. And finally, there's Cane Man. And he's definitely... Oh, wait, hold on. Something just came up. Well, Apparently this isn't Cane Man, his name is Rio. And he's the twin brother of Cane Man? Oh, RGG Studios, what is it with you in this trend? Oh, him? That's not Shintaro Kazama. That's Joji Kazama. He's his twin brother that looks just like him, and works for the CIA instead of being a Yakuza. Oh, that's not Han Jungi. That's Han Jungi. He's the successor to Han Jungi. He's pretty much taking over for the other Han Jungi that died. No, not that Han Jungi from RGG Online. Han Jungi from Yakuza 6. Oh, him? Oh, that's not Cane Man. That's Rio, his twin brother that we just copy and pasted with a different moveset and name. Don't mind the fact that he wears the exact same clothes, despite not really having a reason to. But that's besides the point. Wait, Rio is Cane Man? Just with dissociative identity disorder? So he is the same person. What the fuck? You know what? Whatever. Forget it. Anyway, Rio is essentially Cane Man with a different moveset. I'm sure most people can agree that he is definitely one of the best of your allies, if you were to get into a street fight with anyone. You can perform a few tag heat actions with them as well. They're just really hard to do with them since they actually don't grab that often in this game. How far we've come, haven't we? Bosses are complete punks to these guys too. I mean, I almost feel bad for them sometimes. It's just so hard for them to get a hit in, but they take them down like it's nothing. There isn't a single enemy in this game that stands a chance against your allies. I mean, you honestly don't even really have to do anything until a QTE is triggered or something. Your allies do have health, but since it's in the Dragon Engine, they are able to get back up after their health is drained. In summary, there are a total of 7 people you partner up with, and your allies are just as good in this game as they were in the last few. There are several new heat actions that can be done, and all of them are with Kaito. This game introduced allies that are gained through the friend system, and they are actually quite useful, especially if you don't want the police chasing after you. Enemies and bosses are nothing compared to your allies, as they can take them down pretty quick. They do have a health meter, but just like before, they can regenerate it. For their first spin-off game in the Dragon Engine, this one is one of the higher ranked games in a lot of people's lists, and their allies are no different. Which of course will put this at a 10 out of 10. Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Yakuza 7, does have people who can assist you in a fight, but it's not like the other games. As we've been going over, the games are usually a beat 'em up type, and as such, people backing you up are usually actively fighting regardless of what the player does. However, the only way allies can help you is if you summon them, and even then, they simply do a cinematic attack, and that's it, removing any work the AI does itself. So, to rank this one, I'll simply be looking at the effectiveness of the summons on the enemies you face, as well as a few other factors which we'll go over. The first we'll go over are all of the bronze tier characters. They are of the lowest and will do a lot less damage than those in the higher ranks. Gary Buster Holmes is the first poundmate you're introduced to in a substory focused on poundmates. He uses his GBH gauntlets he had in Kiwami 2, and throws out attacks that hits multiple enemies, before posing on their ass. He does blunt damage for his summon, and this one has a chance of leaving them stunned. A pretty decent one for the start. Tasa Noyama is a sumo wrestler, and you meet him in a substory that involves a tree with a fruit, and you unlock him after completing it. He comes down from the heavens above, and does some sick sumo moves, destroying the ground beneath him along with the enemies in front of him. This does blunt type damage and can lower the accuracy of your enemies, which makes sense since he literally throws them off their feet. Gendawara comes back after his initial appearance in 2, and come back in Kiwami 2, but he no longer is just an enemy. After you battle him in a substory, he will befriend you, and you can call him in alongside his caretaker. Unfortunately, he isn't really happy to be there, and begins to cry very loudly, which destroys the ears of your opponents. This one doesn't do damage, despite it looking like it does, and simply lowers their defense. Makinohara loves being hit, since he's a masochist. So much so that not even Kiryu can break him. Now that's something you can brag about. You train him into being a better masochist, and then you unlock him. He gets spanked in his summon by a dominatrix, and walks more confidently than any man has in the series. He transfers that energy to you, and you gain a significant increase in defense. Honestly, would have been cool if you were completely impervious to damage for a certain duration of turns. Kiyo Shirakawa helps the homeless by feeding them soup. Ichiban was homeless for a chapter, so he qualifies, and after eating it, it will give you an increase in MP for all of your allies. Pretty decent, especially if you're in a pinch without any MP at all. The only character to give Mame some competition. Nancy-chan is a one-of-a-kind crawfish that you saved from a guy that was trying to eat her. She's a companion that sticks by your side throughout several situations, and that is expanded upon an infinite wealth. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Nancy summons her fellow crawfish to take down any poor dude you decide to attack. She jumps at the enemy and strikes them with her pincers, where she then poses on them in a fierce fashion. She does blade type damage, and she has a chance of inflicting poison on the enemies. This one's very badass and kinda cute. The only thing that doesn't make sense is why do I have to pay her to come help me? I mean, she's my friend and, well, she's a crawfish. I mean, what are they gonna do with that kind of money? Chao Kaolong is a weapons dealer, and when you purchase enough things from him, he will befriend you and he can be summoned as well. He uses dual Chinese broadswords like he does in Kiwami and spins the weapons so fast they create dual flaming swords. He doesn't directly strike them with them though, but instead uses this laser-esque attack on them. His attack is blade based, so he'll do more damage to those weaker to it, and has a chance of causing bleed over time. This biker dude here is one you help out in a substory, and has that weird yet flashy hairstyle. When summoned, he will destroy the enemies with the use of his bike skills, and by striking them with the flaming rear wheel of his bike. His attacks do blunt and fire type damage, and will leave the enemies burned on occasions. Jason is the long-lost twin of Jason, except he doesn't kill people. But it does make sense why one would assume that. In his summon, he brings meat to a table and begins to do his job as a butcher, and cuts some up for the fellow you're fighting. This scares the hell out of them to the point where they pass out, and although he doesn't attack them directly, when the summon is finished, it does blade type damage. Seeing this man would strike fear into any man, which is exactly what he has a chance of causing as an ailment against the enemies. Ilyujin makes another appearance once again. After the completion of his substory, he and this woman, whom also appears in that same substory, come close together for warmth during the snowfall. A beautiful sight to take in. Unfortunately, the enemies don't feel the same way, since they don't get to have those manly arms cuddle around them, and will be subject to the cold snowfall. They will be hit with an attack that does ice type damage, and have a chance of being left with a cold. Onomichio is the only surviving relic of Onomichi, since we may never revisit that place again. At least, not anytime soon. After Phonomichio is defeated, and you save the city from his fake merchandise, you can call him in as a poundmate and he will gift you with the powers of Onomichio. You will receive an increase in attack and defense for your entire party, a neat boost when you need it. This poor young girl needed money through donations, since she was trying to help someone close to her that was very ill. Thankfully, she gets just enough money to help that person by the end of the substory. Afterwards, when you unlock her as a poundmate, she continues to ask for donations from different strangers in her summon. By some miracle, she is able to steal their money from their souls to add to the donation box. I'm almost certain her father was a Mr. Shakedown at one point. This does damage them, but also gives you a significant increase in the amount of profit you make at the end of the battle. Quite an interesting poundmate if you ask me. When you find the missing cat in the second part of the Find My Cat substory, you can recruit this kitty to help you out. This isn't any ordinary cat though, because this little dude can transform into a damn tiger. Wow. It lands a devastating attack on them, then transforms back into an innocent little cat. Surprisingly, this doesn't do blade damage as one would think, but instead does blunt damage. And afterwards, there's a possibility that they may be charmed. Honestly, who wouldn't be? Omelette is the successor to Nugget, and helps you run the business of Ichiban Confections. He becomes a poundmate during an unavoidable substory, and introduces you to the business management minigame. When called, he will either lay an egg containing MP or HP, and Ichiban opens it raw and proceeds to eat it over a bowl of rice. This will give a minor increase in either one depending on what is given. Pretty straightforward. Kiryu needs no introduction. After completing the chapter, Passing the Torch, you get Kiryu, Majima, and Saejima. But let's start with Kiryu. He begins the start of the Diamond Rain characters. As you summon him, he has a pre-rendered cutscene at the beginning of his summon.
since they wanted him in the city of Kamurocho. He says his iconic line and obliterates everyone in his path, the only proof that Kiryu probably kills. This does blunt type damage and even has a chance of instantly defeating all the enemies in battle. Truly the Dragon of Dojima. Majima stands on top of a tower as the Hanya appears in the sky behind him, right before he Naruto runs down the building at high speed. He clones his knife and creates a trap that electrocutes the enemy within it as he strikes with his dagger. Obviously this does both blade and electric type damage, with the possibility of leaving the enemies paralyzed. Saejima arises from the sewers for some reason and creates a cyclone with a bunch of stuff simply by using the sewer lid. When the cyclone is created with heavy debris in it, he then tosses the lid, throwing the cyclone directly at them, trapping the enemies with everything on top of them. Most likely killing them. Well, not actually, since they're fine after the cinematic somehow. He also does blunt damage and can lower their defense on some occasions. The last two are unlocked by trading in crests for them. Watase comes out slowly approaching the enemy, before mercilessly beating them to death. He pulls off a Kenshiro and then throws them into the air, before jumping into the air himself and landing directly on top of them and destroying the ground beneath them. He does blunt damage and may lower their attack after he's finished with them. Onto the final Poundmate. Daigo Cinematic begins with a pre-rendered cutscene as well, going into the Tojo clan and then introducing the man himself. But he isn't the only one in the summon, as he summons previously well-known patriarchs before using his most powerful attack, guns, shooting down the enemies, actually killing them this time. This does bullet damage and allows a chance for the enemies to be silenced, preventing any of their abilities from being used. These are all of the Poundmate's cinematic attacks, and honestly they're all cool for their own reasons. In summary, grading this game is going to be different from the others. There are a total of 19 Poundmates. Some provide benefits such as buffing the player, debuffing enemies, healing, and damaging enemies. Because they are spawned by the player, they are automatically capable of defeating enemies and winning battles, including boss battles. There are some flaws like not being able to call them during certain times of the day, or only being able to be used on human enemies. There are also wait times for them, which does suck. The stronger Poundmates can take down enemies with a single summon, so if running away isn't an option due to the area you're in, it could be a suitable alternative. Yakuza Like a Dragon looks to be pretty decent with its allies, giving the first turn-based Yakuza game's Poundmates a 7 out of 10. Combat in this game significantly improved from the first. Attacking is much more smoother, they buffed the hell out of each style, especially Crane, and added several new attacks that make fighting so much more fun. And as one would expect, the allies would also be upgraded, which would be overkill because these guys are already perfect. Wait, why are they just standing around? Why are they... No. Dude. No, dude. Why? Yes, unfortunately, these guys lowered in how useful they were for their offensive approach in battle. They rather now stay back and attack from time to time, so long as they aren't getting their ass beat and being knocked down every 5 seconds. Look, Sugira and Higashi are one thing, but Kaito, I pay you to help me. What the hell am I paying you for, Kaito? Huh? What the hell am I paying you for? So yeah, I guess they saw how crazy good your backup was in the last few games, and they just thought, nah, this is too much work they're doing. Let's just make them useless as hell. Your final ally in the main story is Kawana, who is the final boss. So he's bound to be an amazing ally, right? I mean, he imitates a lot of Yagami's moves, like the parry and the crane jump, so he has to have a lot of moves up his sleeve, and he sucks. I just don't understand. Why? Why is it so hard for them to get a hidden?
You know what, let's just see how long it takes for them to hit them at least once. Look, nobody in this game is great, and it really is a shame, because seeing as how much of a downgrade this is from the previous installment is just saddening, and I wish I could just change it. Well, at least we got a new heat action as a result, as when any of your allies are down, you just give them a drink that says Kiwami, and it instantly revives them. This can only be done once per battle though, and they can also regenerate health just like before from previous installments. One thing they can do just like before is completing battles on their own. It's just that it takes them a really long time to do it, and it isn't guaranteed, but it still is technically possible, so I'll give them a point for it. I never got to see any of them defeat a boss because they just circle them for eternity. So unfortunately, I can't give them the point for this. You have one ally in the school stories, and it's Oshikiri. He has the moveset from the boxing minigame, and I for some reason feel like this guy does a lot better than the story allies. He still has some flaws where he won't attack at all so long as there are only a couple enemies left, but when there are multiple of them, he goes in. While these are the main game allies, there are more in the Kaito Files DLC. Senda and Igarashi will help you out in the battle, but their AI is just as good as the main game. They spend more time going down than they do actually throwing any punches. These two were bosses prior to that fight as well. No tag heat actions can be performed with them, but there is one that is unique to a friend of yours. Jun is the son of the main antagonist in the Kaito Files, and he follows you around just like many other allies. But because he's a young teen, he doesn't actually battle alongside you, rather he cheers you on. But you can perform a tag heat action with them when you're downed, so that's nice to see. In summary, while there are rare moments where your allies can be a little good, they for the most part are very bad, and it sucks since they were some of the best in the series. Tag heat actions do come back along with a couple of new ones, so that's a plus. Your allies can go down, but of course get back up no problem. They can complete battles on their own, but it is highly unlikely that they will. And they do battle alongside you against bosses, but they do stop when they're at very low health. In the end, the game's allies get a 5 out of 10. Gaiden is hopefully the first of many games to come. While sure, it is an excellent entry into the series. The agent style really changed the way Yakuza games could play and feel. This entry in particular has a multitude of allies, both in the main story and in side content. The first is Hanawa, very early on in the game. He uses this baton, and he is already much better than those in Lost Judgment. He will run up to enemies to attack him and will continue to do so. His only flaw is his small health meter. He can go down faster than most in the game as a result, but otherwise he's a pretty solid partner for the start. When you and the gang decide to go and have fun around September, you will encounter a few groups with large amounts of enemies, with some of them even being bosses. But don't worry, your allies are very capable of defending themselves. Shishiro, Tsuruno, and along with the rest of the people show this firsthand. None of them carry some random ass goon moveset like most of your allies usually do, but instead all of them have a boss moveset. They will attack the enemy at all costs, ensuring that they will do some serious damage. When the last enemy remains, a majority of them will stop, but at least one ally, usually Shishiro, will continue to go at them relentlessly. When the next battle begins though, your allies will actually have their health remain at what it was when the last battle ended. During this long battle with the Kijin clan, Shishido joins up with you again, this time wielding a sledgehammer. But I personally think that this one just isn't as good, as he is much slower compared to how he is with his other moveset. He's still very aggressive, don't get me wrong, it's just that his long recovery frames make it easy for him to get hit immediately after his attacks.
When Nishitani III returns for another battle alongside Shishido, Watase and Tsuruno also help you out as well. Watase doesn't have the same moveset he did from Yakuza 5 though, and despite his age, he destroys his enemies quickly, including the boss. During the only time where you get to cross paths with Ichiban, this is the only time in the game where he has a limited health bar, due to the injury he received. So if his health depletes, he will be permanently defeated. But because this is a very specific segment of the game to tie in with the story, I won't penalize it for that. Your last allies are these three that have always stuck by your side. Majima, Saejima, and Daigo will help you take out the reinforcements that arrive at the Omi Alliance, and their AI speaks for itself. They quickly take down each enemy with precision, so you honestly can just sit back while they do all the work. But come on, we all know Kiryu wouldn't do that.
And now we enter the Colosseum, specifically Hell Team Rumble, and your allies are just as good, if not even better than they are in the main story. I looked at several individual allies, and they are all brutal and aggressive in battle, even on their own. And when you have all 10 slots filled, the poor enemies practically get jumped by the people in your group. Each character has a unique type. Some of them are offensive, giving them a lot more options for attack. Some are defensive characters, which are heavier and can power through attacks. All of them also have unique heat ability, whether it be an attack or something like an active healing field. You can also boost your partner's strength when using the all-out attack buff. Even Kiryu can be put as an ally, but he will only stick to the agent style and won't use anything else besides the rush combo and its finishers. Although when you do activate the all-out attack ability, he will actually switch to the dragon or Yakuza style. These allies are great, especially when you have all of them with you in battle. In summary, you have a total of 43 allies, making it another entry with the highest amount of allies. They are extremely aggressive in this game, which I am so glad they brought back. You can perform tag heat actions with them, although no new ones were added, only having a couple of reused ones. They are also able to defeat enemies and can complete battles on their own, along with bosses in those battles as well. A major comeback for the series with its allies as they rank high once again, putting them at a 9 out of 10. And now, we arrive at the final game. Infinite Wealth was the next mainline game where Ichiban is a prominent character, alongside Kiryu. And they moved out of their comfort zone of Japan for this one, by placing the game's setting in the United States, specifically in Hawaii. With it being another turn-based Yakuza game, Poundmates also return, and I'll apply the same rules of 7's grading scale to this one as well. There is one major change to Poundmates, as some characters don't just come in with a cinematic attack, but can actually take turns alongside the player, battling alongside you. Another thing is that there are now allies in the main story that won't appear anywhere else outside of it. The first is Iji, as a support unit during the first battle with these random dudes and against Yamai. In his first battle, he'll do things such as cheering you on, which can increase your attack, throw healing items at you, and when you battle against Yamai, he will be struck by him and he will need to reboot his computer for a couple turns. In this one, he does the same moves as he did before, but can also analyze the enemy, which can increase your speed against them, giving you the first turn. He is the first of your support unit allies in the entire game. And speaking of Yamai, he's your next support unit in the story. He helps you fight the Barracudas and carries all of his attacks from his former boss fight, but not those from his second form. What makes him one of your stronger allies though, is he always receives 2 turns regardless of his attack, so he ends up doing a lot more damage than some of your other support units do. Moves like Taste Steel and Keel Hauler. He is just so cool. Majima, Saejima, and Daigo come back once again, but this time, your initial meeting with them isn't so friendly, as they hate that Kiryu speaks down to them. While they do put up a fight in turn-based combat, it isn't the same for action-based. I'll just give you a little clip to show you how that went down.
can't believe you've done this.
Later on in the final long battle, all three of them think about what happened and decide to assist you anyways, because that's what friends are for. They function identically to their boss fight, where they do have pretty much every ability they used, with the exception of Dragon's Resurgence or whatever it is called for them. Otherwise very powerful partners. Moving on to the only sub-story partner, Mikuru Sakura is an actual person who's an influencer and an MMA fighter, who joins you in a sub-story battle after a series of battles with the man himself. He uses several devastating moves that you can unlock from him and his fights. After the final part of the sub-story, he becomes a pound mate for you to use, which we'll talk about later. And now for the pound mates. The first 5 in the bronze tier are allies that actively fight by your side, like the ones we've been discussing so far. The first is Chitose Buster Holmes, which is Gary's wife? I don't know. And she too carries the same gauntlets he did. She does the swing attack as well, throwing projectiles at the enemy, and has a chance of stunning them. But can come in handy, especially if the enemy has an annoying attack, like calling in for backup or something. This also does blunt damage similar to before. Nathan is a TV director you meet in a sub-story, and he is a master of the sword, as he dual wields katanas. He swings at them a few times, and this obviously does blade damage. Pretty cool. Boni Kashiwa is a film producer, and he loves to use extreme stunts in his work. This includes big explosions. He uses a device to trigger an explosive that deals 150 damage to the enemy. This attack does fire damage as well. It seems like RGG Studios really grew fond of Patriarch Gandawara, since he returns for yet another game. Look, no offense to this guy, he's alright, but he appeared in so many games already. I mean, why not have other characters like my man Mac? Where's the love for him? I mean, I just really miss him. But Gandawara no longer has a cinematic summon, but is instead a support summon, and he cries similarly to the way he did in 7, but now does it 3 times and has a chance of putting them into a state of fear. Charlie is a delivery driver that appears in the Crazy Delivery minigame. After it's completed, you unlock him. When summoned, he will attack using his bike, which does 100 blunt damage and heals 100 of your party's HP. Definitely one of my go-tos in the early game, especially in the dungeons. Mamayako assists you in providing you with a nice cup of espresso. He is the first to not do any damage to the enemies, but instead provides you with a decent amount of HP recovery for 3 turns, with each giving you 300 HP. Pocket Circuit Fighter returns once again, and this time with a giant pocket circuit car that he runs into the enemies with on each turn, doing 300 blunt damage. He is also not recruited through the traditional sub-story, but instead through Kiryu's memoirs. It seems it doesn't matter how old you are or how skilled you are as a fighter, you're always going to kick ass no matter what, so long as you're on the good guys team. Kazami Evolution, the god of rock, and the man who really needs a storm for his music video. He is the first ally that has a cinematic summon, and during it, he calls a storm that even the crew filming it fall victim to. The enemies get hit with debris and fall off the platform. This will do 1000 ice damage to the enemies. Sojimaru comes back to suck up everything just like before, only this time you're able to tame the mechanical beast, as he becomes a pound mate, and now it can fly. As it attempts to attack, its battery dies and shuts down to crush the enemies below, so everything works out in the end. This will also do 1000 electric type damage. After a bit, Nancy finally finds a partner to kick ass with. A hermit crab and a crawfish. An interesting combination. Nancy does a series of quick slashes on the enemy, and Olivia will perform a spinning shell move to really knock the wind out of the dude. This will do 1000 blade damage with a chance of poison. This is one of the few duo pound mates in the game. The master who never ages and is so powerful he can exist in other time periods and universes. It was probably expected he passed after 5 since he no longer appeared in the games, when he's always been a staple character since 1. But nope, Infinite Wealth disproved that. And he comes back to show that the Kamaki style will never die. He will perform some very powerful attacks, including the Kamaki Tiger Drop. What a badass. This does 1000 blunt damage and has a chance of stunning when finished. Another staple to the series is the Cabaret Club minigame, whether you go as a customer or as a manager. And in Infinite Wealth, the members of Foreshine, specifically Yuki and Koyuki, return to meet with Kiryu once again. They will attack using familiar signs that have been used from the original minigame, such as ice or a giant ashtray, before smacking the hell out of them. Looks like Foreshine really fell off after Kiryu left. Can't even treat customers properly. But it's okay, these guys deserve it. This will do 1000 blunt damage, along with an attack buff to all your party members. After missing in action for a bit, Kazuki and Yuya finally return after Stardust was taken over by Hanjungi. They got a new look, and during the summon, they will make the customer comfortable in a very uncomfortable way, talking to them almost seductively, before also smacking them down with a toast. These are the only two to rival those from Club 4 Shine. They will also do blunt damage as well, and will give the party a magic buff. The final sets of allies are those in the diamond rank, and the first is one of the men who somehow survived the infamous cutscene gun. While there are many ways this man could have destroyed the enemies, he does something unexpected. Instead, he makes you some soup. Not just any soup though, cold noodle soup. Very tasty, and heals 1000 HP to your party, as well as an increase in defense and willpower. Maybe I should eat some cold noodles myself. The most unexpected character to return to the series, given how he should have died, is Richardson. He uses his iconic dual-wield handguns and takes down the target in the most manly and American way possible, by singing Kamurocho Lullaby while he shoots at the enemy. This guy is a master at multitasking, and this is the only evidence I need, honestly. This of course does gun damage to all the enemies. Very nice. Now we return to Asakura. His summon can actually have two different cinematics depending on who he does them with. Both Kiryu and Ichiban have different forms when fighting the enemies, so it's really cool to see how they both interact with Asakura. They both perform some quick and stylish attacks. A version of Ichiban's cinematic can also be seen in the substory, but without the area where all the cinematics take place. This will do 2000 blunt damage, and also has a chance of instantly defeating all the enemies. After her initial appearance in 2 and cameo in 3, Kaoru Sayama returns, where she still carries the duty as a Yakuza huntress. But not just for Yakuza this time, anyone you summon her against falls victim to her wrath. She uses a wooden katana similarly to the way she did in 2, and all I can say is these guys are really lucky that this is not a real katana. But I guess these are overly exaggerated, just a little bit, so I'm sure they're fine. But it still does 2000 blade damage, so maybe not actually. One of the 4 members of the Yakuza 4, after Akiyama's long and tiring search to see if Kiryu was actually alive, he finds peace after finally finding Kiryu, and joins you as a poundmate. Speedstar kicks in as he walks out to use the money toss ability from Yakuza 0, but the enemies won't get any money so easily, as Akiyama kicks the money directly towards them, giving the enemies the most painful and expensive paper cuts they'll ever have in their life, and shares the love with even more loads of money, before doing a powerful dive kick and ending off with an inspirational quote. Beautifully said, Akiyama. When finished, this will do 2000 blunt damage along with a chance of charm. And now for the final ally. Date has been by your side through thick and thin and helps you out whenever he can, including sending several squads to aid you when taking out whoever it is you're battling. He shoots at them and the gun jams. He makes a big mistake by pointing the gun towards the sky and accidentally shoots the propeller of the helicopter. And conveniently, they fall right onto the enemies, but not before safely exiting and parachuting down with the pilot. This will do 2000 fire damage, ending off the last cinematic with a bang. One major improvement is you no longer have to wait a certain number of battles just to call in any poundmates again. Sure, they do cost a lot more if you want to call them in again in the same battle, but by late game you'll have a lot of money anyways, so it won't really be a problem. Summons that are cinematic also don't cost a turn like before, so you can still attack as either Kiryu or Ichiban after the summon is finished. You can also summon with benefits, which cost more, but allow for more damage to be done, or for your party to receive more health from the poundmates. And also there are story poundmates, which I think make the battle a little more engaging since characters aren't just obligated to staying in the background, but can now assist you in battle. And just in general, support characters being able to battle by your side is so nice to see. All of their attributes carry over from 7, so they can still defeat bosses and such, and can't be defeated since they don't have a health bar themselves. One neat little thing I did notice though is that you can still give support units items despite them not needing it, and they even have a little animation when you do so. Just thought that was a little nice detail. In summary, there are a total of 24 allies in the game, technically 27 if you count the duo poundmates as 2 characters, and it's really nice to see some variety when it comes to the game's partners. They are effective when used against enemies, now doing fixed damage, so you get an idea of how much you will do to the enemies in total. Cinematics return, and now there are also support units that actively fight by your side, which is really nice. Bosses can also be defeated by them, and they can complete battles on their own as well, and they cannot be defeated in battle. For the final game in the series so far, the last game ends the allies on a very good note, placing Infinite Wealth's allies at a 9 out of 10. With so many games in the series, many allies have come and gone. Some stayed, some got worse, and others better, but at the end of the day, having allies in these games are a staple that I hope never disappears. I know it may not be that big of a deal to some people, and there probably is someone out there that doesn't like the allies at all for one reason or another, but seeing people fight by your side regardless of how good they are is a nice thing that makes playing the games even more fun, with you and your comrades knocking down everyone in your path, leading to some of the coolest moments in the games. They've gone from simple allies that can throw punches, sometimes when there aren't even any enemies nearby, to having their own abilities and heat actions, giving them a lot more personality on the battlefield. Also, I do want to apologize for the egregious amount of time it took for this video to come out, but this is the longest video I've made on my channel so far. There was also a lot of personal life things I had to take care of, which only made it more difficult for this video to come out. I want to thank you guys for being so patient. I really appreciate all of you, I really do. And just as always, thank you guys for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys later.